Good morning, everybody. I wish to speak to you about the state of affairs in South Africa without touching on the mood amongst the Boere, Senekal, Brendan Horner, that guy Papa Bavlu, who was murdered in his house 3 days after Brendan Horner, the guy in, oh dear me, is it Pofadder, who was killed a day or two later, the owner of the hotel, not Pofadder, but I can't think of the name. I wish to talk to you about something else entirely. Something that we have discussed over and over and over again, but which bears mentioning once more, and perhaps 100 times more. Yesterday afternoon, I read a report. I'll tell you where I read it. Excuse the noise in the background, but it's warm and I must keep the door open. On iol.co.za. And it says here it's by ANA reporter. I don't know what ANA stands for. 8 Environment Ministry officials suspended over 2 billion rand tender fraud. Ladies and gentlemen, you've read all of the stories, or most of them, certainly enough of them, to know for yourselves and without my help that South Africa is being plundered. The government, the African National Congress government, and what it calls erroneously, it's a misnomer, it's deployed cadres. Strictly speaking, a cadre is a group of people, not an individual. A group trained for a special purpose, or a group devoted to a special purpose. The ANC and its deployed cadres are robbing this country hand over fist. By now, you must see this. By now, you must know this. I'm telling you things that you already know, and which you as Suidlanders don't have to be told again. But there may be one person who watches this video, one liberal, one person who believed in the new South Africa Rainbow Nation, one mainstream person, one semi-conservative person, one person who has been misled by a church, a newspaper, an employer, or their social environment, into believing that South Africa would work under the African National Congress, South African Communist Party alliance, that it would flourish, or that it would at least be okay. And that person may profit by this video. Now is the time to prepare. Now is the time to make ready for a crisis. You must begin to position yourself for the implosion of South Africa. Because implode, South Africa will implode. The country will continue to deteriorate. There is no going back. We have passed the tipping point. And sooner or later, and very soon, we are going to reach the point of unsustainability. What do I mean by that? If you build a house of cards, you can remove one or two of the cards without the house collapsing completely. But at a certain point, it must collapse. It is a bit like a derelict building. If a building is looked after well for its entire lifespan, it can survive for centuries. We know this from castles and palaces and forts and old houses and pubs and shops and restaurants and municipal buildings and so on and so forth, particularly in Europe. And not all of them are built of solid blocks of granite. However, if a building is left untended, if it is derelict and unmaintained, that building that may have survived hundreds of years may deteriorate to the point of irreparability, unable to be repaired, irreparable, within a decade or less. This is a well-known phenomenon that you and I both have observed over the course of our lives. Everybody has seen it, everybody has witnessed it, everybody knows this. And the state of South Africa is now at the point where certain aspects and elements and facets of it cannot be sustained and must sooner or later crumble. In fact, we're beginning to see it already. To restore the South African Defence Force to its former glory would cost 20 times as much, 200 times as much, 50 times as much, who knows? But inordinately more than if it had been properly maintained over the past, call it 26 years. If you service your car regularly and well, it costs you far less than it would to replace expensive, complicated, large working parts that would otherwise wear out over the equivalent period. 3 or 4 years of services are far cheaper than the replacement of an engine. In English, we have the expression, a stitch in time saves 9. One stitch on a fraying garment will save you from having to put in 9 stitches at some point. The simple reality is this, that pensions are under threat. Jobs are becoming scarce, and South Africa's unemployment rate is now something like 53%. The value of the rand, the purchasing power of the rand, has decreased so dramatically I read an article the other day which suggested that investments on the JSE had lost something like 20% of their value over the past, if I remember correctly, 5 years. I'm not an expert in this field by no stretch of the imagination. When Saitlanders, through my mouth, talks about economic things, we really just regurgitate, we parrot things that we have read elsewhere or studied elsewhere, things said by the real, true experts. We don't venture our own opinions. We are hopelessly unqualified to do so. So I'm not going to elaborate too much on that stock exchange illustration because I don't have the competence to articulate it properly. Let it suffice to say that the real experts are talking about a real loss of 20% loss on the JSE. It was recently revealed, and we made one or perhaps two videos on this, that the South African government has a deficit over and above any loans that it's taken. So it's not a deficit in tax revenue, it's an actual shortfall of actual money in its hands. After all taxation and loans and this and that and the next thing, it is still 2 billion rand short a day. And that 2 billion rand is not being covered, meaning that it has to juggle. Meaning that it has to borrow from Peter to pay Paul, as my mom's mom, my maternal grandmother would have said. It's just a bit under 2 billion rand a day, amounting to just over 50 billion per month. 50 billion short a month. It has to not make certain payments or certain investments or expend certain funds in various departments, in various organs of state, every single month to the tune of 50 billion rand. Imagine if you were a fruit seller and your daily costs in, perhaps you had a little kiosk on a street side, on a pavement, in olden day Europe or something, and your daily costs were 100 rand. 100 rand in taxi fare, 100 rand including the amount of food you had to buy for your kids and the rent that you had to pay in the little garret or hovel or little house that you lived in, and so on and so forth. And every day, the profit that you made from your fruit stall was just 80 rand. And therefore, every day, you had to either not feed your children properly, or not pay your rent, or beg and plead with the taxi driver to give you a free ride. You'll pay him tomorrow, you'll pay him next week. This is over and above the loans that South Africa has been able to take. Do you understand? That the loans are out of the picture here. Or put another way, the loans are already accounted in this story that I'm telling you. The government cannot make ends meet. so badly that it is unable to loan enough money to cover that shortfall. Unable. Problems exist at every level of government: municipal, provincial, and national. It is now so severe that these things are not reported. For instance, there has been precious little coverage of what has occurred in this municipality, where I live, where many other Suidlander senior leaders live. That is to say, the Renosterberg municipality, which includes the towns of Philipstown, Petrusville, and Van der Kloof, from where I am coming to you now. Beginning a number of years ago, the municipality stopped paying over, or paying over in full, the electricity payments of the residents. So we residents would pay for our electricity, we would pay the municipality, and the municipality did not hand the money over to Eskom. Eskom allowed the problem to deteriorate so badly that we now owe, between the original sums, the original amounts for the electricity, plus penalties, plus interest, almost 100 million rand. We're talking about a town, or a village really, of a mere 350 permanent residents. Somebody told me the other day, somebody who seemed to know what they were talking about, that in fact it's not 350, it's 250 permanent residents. Call it 300 for the sake of a round number, for the sake of this story. A small village. Can you believe that we owe Eskom 100 million rand for the sake of the electricity monies that were stolen and misappropriated by our municipality? Now, if our story hasn't attracted much attention, how many other similar stories are there right across South Africa? And not just in terms of electricity, maybe parks and gardens, or parks and recreation, and roads and street lights. And there was another example that I wanted to use, I can't think of it now. And you know what is the solution? The agreed solution to our problem? We had our electricity cut off and there were demonstrations and what have you. Do you know what was the agreed solution? Pay the money. In other words, Eskom said, we'll give you electricity again, but pay us the money. The money, of course, can only come from the residents. So the municipality has effectively taken no responsibility. Eskom, who allowed the municipality to get itself into so much trouble, Eskom, who definitively, by definition, traded recklessly with our municipality, has taken nil responsibility. And we are required to take responsibility twice over, to pay that same money again. And it doesn't end there. Apparently, in September of 2017, our municipality contributed the deducted pension fund contributions, or paid over the deducted pension fund contributions from the municipal employees' salaries to the pension funds for the last time. So since October 2017, the municipality has continued to deduct the pension fund contributions from the employees, but not pay it over to the pension funds. Can you imagine a greater shame and disgrace? And the African National Congress, South African Communist Party Alliance is aware of this through every echelon of the hierarchy, right to the top. There's no possible way that you now know about this, that I know about it, that my mates who told me this story originally, I subsequently went and verified it, know about it, but the local MEC doesn't know about it. That the provincial, what do you call it? That His Regal Highness, the satrap of the province, doesn't know about it. That the National Council of Provinces doesn't know about it. And that the National Executive Committee or National Executive Council of the ANC doesn't know about it. They know, and they're allowing it to happen. You must wake up. You must start to put your thinking cap on. You must begin to appreciate how severe is this problem. Whether it's in the form of a 2.1 billion rand tender scandal at, of all places, the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries. Whether it's the scandal over the what do they call them, the kettles, the boilers at Medupi, that were made 3 stories too short. 3 stories. 3 stories. They got their dimensions wrong, not by 3 microns, or 3 millimeters, or 3 centimeters, or 3 meters. They mucked up the dimensions by 3 stories. Whether it is the 42 people, the matter of the 42 people arrested for a 56 million rand scandal about the branding of police vehicles, whether it's the money, which you won't read about this in News 24, but you can read about it, and it's not contested. There haven't been any libel suits brought, paid by Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma to win the presidency of the African Union. Or whether it's the arms scandal, or whether it's the abuse of military aircraft, or whether it's VBS Bank. The list goes on and on and on and on. Our country is in severe trouble, and you must prepare for the implosion of this society, because it is now clearly inevitable. You must be able to see the writing on the wall. Without us even getting into racial tension, without us even addressing farm murders, without us even speaking about the government's failure to support commercial farmers through the drought of the past, call it for the sake of a round number, 7 years. Without us even talking about the many and various other problems out there that our government is both unwilling and unable to address. Both unwilling and unable. If you are in any doubt about this, go and do the reading for yourself. Not on News 24, not on IOL or Times Live. Yes, you will find some stuff there, but read further. Watch videos by Dr. Anthea Jeffrey. Listen to speeches given by, oh dear me, I've hit a blank. This guy, a very learned guy from the Institute of Race Relations. Oh, why can't I think of his name? The evidence is now overwhelming and incontrovertible or indisputable. What's more, the evidence indicates that matters are getting worse more rapidly. In other words, it's what they call a hockey stick graph. Things are getting worse more rapidly. And some people are still doing nothing to prepare. I think of my own family members, whom I love very dearly. Very, very, very dearly. Who won't buy a can of tuna a month. There is nothing more that I can do for them. All of the love in the world cannot help them. Therefore, you and I must do the best that we can as Suidlanders to prepare for ourselves and our loved ones to the extent that we are able to do so. We must recognize that there lies before us an insurmountable problem. It cannot be surmounted. It cannot be, you can't jump over it. You cannot hurdle it. End of story. There is nothing that can be done to fix it. You may be one of those people who believed that Cyril Ramaphosa was going to fix everything. At that time, we produced a number of videos. I don't know how many were published. We were struggling at the time with uploads and I don't know what all. But we produced a number of videos in which we explained nicely that Cyril Ramaphosa is not humanly capable of fixing it. When I was in the USA, somebody from South Africa gave me a long lecture on how the US police system works. They kind of suggested that I perhaps was a bit of an idiot. And so they gave me a long lecture on the US police system, and now that Donald Trump is in charge, this and that, and the police this and the police that. There is no such thing as the American police. It doesn't exist. You have the CIA, but they're spies. They do intelligence functions. You have the FBI, which is responsible for crimes that are so severe that they are deemed to be in the national interest, the federal interest. And they will intervene in certain crimes. But they have no role whatsoever in on-the-ground policing. What you do have is a town police, and they are answerable to the mayor of that town. So if the mayor is liberal, then the police generally toe a liberal line. You have the county sheriff answerable to the county commissioner. And if the county commissioner is conservative, then generally speaking, to whatever extent, is reasonable, the county sheriff toes that political line. And then you have the state troopers, answerable to the governor of the state. And if the governor of the state is liberal, then those state troopers will act according to his direction on certain political matters, such as the declaring of a state of emergency in the state of Virginia. Was it at the beginning of last year or the previous year, when I was meant to fly overseas and give a speech at a rally? The governor of Virginia declared a state of emergency, and we deemed it hopelessly inappropriate and reckless for me to attend that function. And Donald Trump had no say whatsoever. Similarly, on a human level, what did you ever think Cyril Ramaphosa was going to be able to do about a broken system in which it is in the best interest of the participants of that system for it to be broken? How on earth? We made videos about this. We explained it so nicely. It's common sense, man. How could anybody have been so dumb? So thick. Excuse me. I'm sorry. But how could anybody have been so dumb as to believe that Cyril Ramaphosa was going to single-handedly, or with a little entourage of disciples, remedy the malfeasances and corruption in every single person, in every single department of every single municipality in South Africa? And on top of that, in every person, in every department, in every provincial government of South Africa, and on top of that, in every person, in every state-owned enterprise, and in every state, I'm trying to think of the word for all the different departments, not the national departments as you and I know them, but for instance, the cadastral survey department, or the council for geophysics, and so on and so forth. You know what I mean. All of these little structures, all of these little organs of state. I must go, ladies and gentlemen. We have urgent matters to attend. I think I've said all that there is worth saying. Guys, the problems are never ending now. They are no longer sporadic or intermittent. They are now a steady and continuous stream. We urge you now more than ever, prepare for serious problems in this society. Problems of joblessness, of hyperinflation, of loss of the value of the currency, of black-white racial tensions, of whites being blamed for every problem under the sun. Prepare for high food prices. Prepare for large increases in crime. It must happen. It's inevitable. As it is, we live in a social paradigm in which it is deemed normal to react to adversity through crime. Therefore, the greater the adversity, necessarily the greater the crime, the more widespread the crime, and the more severe the crime. Do this now. I thank you for your time in listening to this long video. Bye-bye.